Did you check out Bill Barnwell on Thursday and what he wrote about Brock Purdy?
I did. I'm going to do a video on that probably tomorrow, but it's very interesting. We can go through it right now for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is the quote. He says, yes, the 49ers could take the bold stance of trusting they'll find the next Brock Purdy on day 3 of the draft, trade the quarterback for significant draft capital, and use the picks and the cost savings to spend heavily throughout the roster. Barnwell explained. Nothing about his play or the organization's public comments suggest that that's likely to happen. I suggested over the summer a Purdy deal would come in at 5 years, $325 million, or roughly $65 million per year. That's still the number that he and his agents are likely targeting. What's the solution with Brock Purdy? He, according to Pro Football Reference, he came into yesterday ranking 6th in the NFL with a 68.5 adjusted QBR, 12th with a 98.7 passer rating, 9th with a 49.5 passer success rate for the season. What do you think? I mean, where are you on the Purdy deal? Lynch says he's our guy. Ian Rappaport came out before the game last week and said that the Niners are still targeting paying Brock this offseason. Do you think they will change their mind? Do you think they're going to go forward with the contract? What do you think the average annual will be?
I think Purdy's play this year has caused the Niners to at least have some type of trepidations and worries, because when you watch him this season, when he hasn't been surrounded by a supporting cast, he has played pretty average football. And for his entire 2024 season, I'd probably call it a B-, C+. And so when you are investing in a quarterback $50 to $60 million, you have to be absolutely sure that that price tag is going to be worthwhile, that it's going to be a good investment, that quarterback is worth it. And right now, I just don't see how you can watch that game last night, how you can watch the game against Buffalo, how you can look at some of his fourth quarter and second half numbers, his numbers when he has to come from behind, and say definitively he's worth $50 to $60 million. You have to be a really special quarterback to be in that tier. And I think that Purdy at times has been very special, but there are some concerns that I have. You have the elbow, you have the shoulder, you have when everything isn't going perfectly for him, he's really struggled. This whole him performing against man and zone is definitely worrisome for me. I've been on this for a little while, and I think we need to bring it up as a larger talking point, because when he goes up against zone, he can cater to his elite traits with the timing, the anticipation, and the accuracy. When he goes up against
guys open, he can lead people to the void in the zone.
To the void. He can layer those footballs in there, though. But when teams play man and they're playing press and he can't throw with anticipation, he can't lead his receivers and layer those balls in there, he struggles mightily. Now, that's a little bit of a personnel problem because the Niners don't have man beaters, and the Kansas City Chiefs kind of exploited that in the Super Bowl, and the Baltimore Ravens did it last year during Christmas. But yeah, I'm having some hesitations with paying Purdy right now, and this is coming from a guy who's really been a huge fan of his. I think what would be perfect is if the Niners can give him the Baker Mayfield contract. I've been talking about that over the last couple of weeks. Baker got 3 years for $100 million, and right now I think he's playing better ball than Brock Purdy. Definitely has a stronger arm and has some pretty good mobility. And so that's the kind of route that I would try to go. I also don't think it's crazy to have Purdy play on the final year of his deal. If he plays really well, you pay him, and that's fine, because then you know that he is your guy. If he struggles, crisis averted. Because can you imagine if you give him 50 to 60 million, he plays like he did this year, next year, and you're like, man, he's not a franchise guy. That can hinder your franchise for the foreseeable future.
The only thing is, it's like watching him operate behind this line this year. I can't sit there and advocate for what others are advocating for, go with Sam Darnold, because Sam Darnold would have been sacked a shit ton behind this line this year. I mean, you're going to have to really upgrade the line if you go with any true pocket passer who doesn't have mobility, because Brock showed a lot of mobility this year, and it's not because he likes to run. It's because he was being flushed and he was just trying to keep plays alive. There's a lot of people who try to use the stat that Brock had the third most time to throw as some stat that illustrates that the Niners offensive line is good.
And
in reality, that's not true at all. He's got more time to throw because he's bailing from the pocket and giving himself more time to throw, but he's more times than not allowed to stand at the top of his drop and survey the field and deliver the ball.
Yeah.
So it's stats lie, liars use stats. I understand why people are using that stat, but you have to really kind of think about that stat, and you have to have seen the games to understand that, yeah, he's held the ball longer, but it's not because his line's good. He's holding the ball longer because he's committed to throwing the ball instead of running it, and he's being flushed off of his spot, and he's moving to another launch point. All right, let's get to the defense for a second. The defense obviously played well enough to win yesterday, but sure enough, like has happened all year, they caved in the fourth quarter. They give up long drives. Brock threw a terrible pick, but there was 5 minutes and change left in the game. There's no law that says that your defense has to fucking cave and basically let the other team run the game out on you. And that's basically what happened here. So, yeah, I know there were a lot of people in the chat last night who were pissed because we were talking a lot about the defense and not as much about the offense, mostly because of Campbell, and we'll get to Campbell, but also just because once again, the Niner defense in the fourth quarter with the game on the line did not bow their neck, did not stand up. They got shredded again. And so this is kind of like the biggest fraud stat of all time was the Niners' third-ranked defensive rating as far as yards per game allowed coming into this game. I mean, are the 49ers defense this year without Dre Greenlaw and with the guys they had out there really a top 3 NFL defense? No way. No way.
Yeah.
And yet in points, they were 21st. I don't know that I've ever seen that before. You're third in yards and 21st in points. Isn't that what they are?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's got to be almost unheard of.
And terrible on third downs and terrible on fourth downs and in the red zone.
Bad situational football team on both sides of the ball, but especially on defense. But what happened to the defense in the fourth? Why could they not stop Kyren at all? I know it's all on Brock and Kyle, and you score 6 points at home against a team that just gave up 40, and it's on you. But the defense had an opportunity to give the ball back to the offense in the fourth and failed.
Yeah,
what happened in your mind?
Just tweeted out that the Niners are moving on from Devondre Campbell, so we knew that was happening.
Yeah,
complete stiff move.
4 weeks too late. I mean, 7 weeks too late. I mean, not only did I call that one saying this guy was horse shit, but I also called it in a live stream either with you or somebody else saying that if they were going to pull the plug on him, that he was going south on them.
Yeah.
I think I told you that, didn't I?
Yep. Yeah.
And sure enough, I mean, the personality type just screamed out. It's like proud veteran, really kind of angry, all this bullshit justification of he had a way overinflated opinion of his skills and who he is as a player. He's nothing close to that. I mean, seriously, who did you think you were, Devondre Campbell? And, here's the bottom line on this one. I lost it the other day. I've been losing it a lot on some of these streams. I've been yelling a lot more in the last month. But I lost it the other day because, and I think I played it for you on the stream we did last week, where it was like, you ask these people about you. I go to these press conferences and ask about these guys that are obviously not playing up to standard, and everybody loves everybody. Oh, I love Sorensen. Are you kidding me? Nick's doing a hell of a job. Then you talk to Nick. I love Campbell. Are you kidding me? That was one of his best games. He's looking phenomenal. It's like, well, why? How come we fucking suck? How come we keep losing all these games? How come? Now, I realize the defense was not the problem yesterday. The offense was the problem. But the defense also has faded so consistently in the fourth quarter all year, and it happened again in this game. What did the Niners do the wrong thing
earlier this year, Larry?
What's that?
When you asked Chris Forster about Jake Brendel, that explanation was insane.
He said there's 9 things Jake does better than everybody else in the room. It's like, well, why is he 40th rated
in the NFL?
Yeah, why is he the lowest rated center in the league, Chris? I mean, I mean, and why is Ben Barch quite a bit better than Aaron Banks?
Yeah.
I mean, and he didn't play all year. I kind of think Drake Nugent might have been better than Jake Brendel if they'd given him an opportunity, but they never did. It's just Spencer Burford came off the bench and played pretty damn well at guard, and he's been sitting there all year. Yep. Something has been screwed up all year long on both sides of the ball. But as far as defense, Chase, if you look at all the best defenses, you're watching Philly. What do they run? 3-4. What does Baltimore run? 3-4. What does Kansas City run? 3-4. What does Detroit run? 3-4. All the best teams in football, where the Chargers have this great defense this year, what do they run? 3-4. And yet the Niners are in a wide 9-4-3 with Kasarik as the D-line coach. They passed up on Fangio to give the job to Sorensen, only to let Fangio go to Philadelphia, and Fangio's reinvented Philly. So now Philly's a Super Bowl contender. I think they got a good shot. Do the Niners need to not just get rid of Sorensen, but get rid of their defensive plan? Is the wide 9 not a good plan? Should they move off of Chris and the entire defensive staff and start anew? To me, Kyle needs a star defensive coordinator, and he needs to just allow that guy to do his job. And they gotta bulk up their talent on both sides of the ball. But what do you think of the wide 9?
So Jim Schwartz runs a lot of wide 9, and the Cleveland Browns have one of the top defenses in the NFL. And Robert Saleh, when he was with the Jets, was running the same defense, and statistically, they were still one of the top defensive units in the NFL. I think the issue with switching to a 3-4, Nick Bosa is not a stand-up edge rusher. Nick Bosa is in a 3-point stance. He wants to have that fast get off with his hand in the dirt, and that's how he plays. Nick Bosa, I don't think, would be the same guy if he were the stand-up edge rusher as an edge, nor do you really want him dropping back in coverage, and you've already committed to him financially. And so I'm fine if the Niners continue to move forward with the 4-3. We've seen a lot of 4-3 teams win Super Bowls throughout the course of NFL history, but you have to move on from Nick Sorensen. I understand his defense played pretty well last night. They held the Rams to 12 points. He did a better job coaching the defense than Kyle Shanahan did coaching the offense. But what also happened, biggest play of the game, you need to stop on third down. Nobody is lined up across from Colby Parkinson, the tight end. He just runs free. And of course, Matthew Stafford.
A free release. And Stafford never even tried to even pretend like he was going to plant his feet. It was total hot route type thing. He was looking for whoever got the free release. He didn't have his shoulders this way. He was literally squared to the line of scrimmage, ready to throw the hot route. And the coverage, the Niners had to run a guy over there late. I mean, it was like, guys, what are we fucking doing here?
Yeah. And I saw some people point out, like, yeah, there was some pre-snap motion on that play, and that forced Hufanga, who was kind of at that second level, little hybrid linebacker, to drift to his right a little bit. And they're like, Hufanga, he got faked out. He wasn't even lined up over Parkinson to start the play. All right. So the pre-snap motion may have directed Hufanga, but who is supposed to line up across from the tight end? Nick Bosa is in that 3-point stance. He's getting ready to rush the passer and do his job, but nobody's to his left. And so we have seen this year so many scheme breakdowns, so many broken plays, so many communication breakdowns, so many tackling problems. And I know that you and I talked about tackling last week, and I saw somebody saying tackling, it's not on the defensive coordinator. I actually argue that tackling is coaching, because you have to practice it. There is a formula behind it. There are fundamentals behind tackling. Over pursuing, being in a right position to make a tackle, that's all important. And so, look, I think there are bigger issues with this Niners defense than just this game. I think that you can run the 4-3, you can run the wide 9, but you need to get better talent and more depth at defensive tackle and at edge rusher. I will say, when Dre Greenlaw was in the game in that first half, what a hell of a first half that he had. I mean, coming off a torn Achilles, 8 tackles, he was everywhere, and he was making impactful plays. And, you asked me a little bit earlier, and then we started talking about Devondre Campbell because he got released, and then we went to the great Acho on Ether beat about, what happened in that fourth quarter. Well, Dre Greenlaw went out of the game, and then the Rams started to be able to run the ball successfully with Kyron Williams. They weren't running to the perimeter. They were running right in between the tackles, and Dre Greenlaw wasn't there to plug those run gaps. And so not having him change the game, not having a lot of depth on that side of the ball all year has forced the Niners to wear down. But look, I do think it's risky to bring back Greenlaw. It's risky and maybe expensive to bring back Talanoa Hufanga. But this defense has looked a lot different the last 2 weeks and a lot better with Hufanga back the last 2 games and last week, and Greenlaw back this week, where if you bring them back, you get better at defensive tackle, you get better at edge, you bring in some more quality depth in free agency and in the draft. I think that's what can cause the Niners defense to have a turnaround, and you need a better defensive coordinator to put these players in a position to succeed.
I do want to share the screen on one. I know we're kind of coming down the home stretch here. Kyle's going to talk in a couple minutes. We're just going to go another minute or two. But I want to share the screen on John Middlecoff. Middlecoff had a pretty good take today on Purdy. Here it is. You're familiar with John, right?
I think he's the best NFL YouTuber right now, just covering the league as a whole. So, yeah, I love his
content.
He
is.
Part of Brock Purdy's game, part of what made him, in the eyes of Kyle, a special player, was decision-making. Like, he's not some dynamic player with his arm. He does not have a huge arm. Well, I can live with that if you are an elite decision-maker, right? And that, for a long time, when, the Niners were kicking ass, was a huge part of his arsenal, was making the right decisions, was not putting the ball in harm's way. It was like, this guy can become like an athletic version of, I don't know, his comp was, when he was playing really well, like Drew Brees. And then you watch tonight, you're like, what was that? 5 minutes left to go in the game. Your season's on the line. It's 9-6. And to make that throw, it's like, I don't even know. That's something like Jameis would do. That's something a bottom 3 or 4 quarterback makes. This is their season.
Yeah. There was no making no sense of that play. I mean, it was not a good play. Brock talked about it after the game, but I mean, there's just no way around it. That was not a good decision by Brock. And there's, and it's like John's totally right. So much of Brock's value proposition as a player is about making good decisions. And I'll say this as far as, here's Brock answering 2 questions. I want to share this one because these are pretty good. This is from last night's presser. Tell me what you think of these. I asked him the first question, so we'll play the first one and then we'll play the second one. Here's me asking the question about Debo, because I thought that they force-fed Debo, and I asked Brock about it.
Debo got some touches early. Were you guys making a concerted effort to get him going early, or is that just the way it came down?
I think that's just how it went down. We thought the Rams were going to be able to give us some looks for Debo to, make some slash plays and stuff. But more than anything, Debo was just playing his position and the ball just went his way in certain plays. And so, obviously we wish we would have connected on a couple more and wish I would have been a little bit more accurate on some of those throws. But more than anything, I was just going through the reads and progressions and trying to give or take what the defense gave me. So
it seemed like they were kind of force feeding the ball to Debo. That's what I got out of that. And then here's the other one was Brock kind of taking accountability for the offensive failing last night.
The offense left a lot out there. You think about the game you had today, like, how would you kind of evaluate how you played, and what would you say factored in? Say it was the weather. Would you say it was more so a dominant defense? How would you kind of explain?
I think we had ops for sure across the board. The weather was the weather in the first half, but even with that, I still think there was some ops for us to convert on third down and move the chains, and then in the second half as well, there was drives out there where it's like we could have stayed on the field, and for myself, I had to be better for this team and didn't play my best tonight. So got to watch the film and see what happened. And where my mindset was at with each play. But I just feel like I had a lot of plays left out there that I could have made for our team. I thought the defense and special teams played so good. And, you know, that's what's hurting me is I just feel like I failed the team, you know, that I could have been better for our offense and we could have put up more points. But Rams are a good team overall. But more than anything for the way that we play on offense and our standard, I could have been better for sure.
I mean, I like that accountability. To me, that's the way a leader does handle a loss. You don't duck out or anything, and you don't try to blame anybody else. You take the blame. But you know, if he's not John's point is John's point, which is a good point, which is decision making is a big part of his value proposition. If he doesn't make good decisions, he's not as valuable.
I agree, and I think Purdy's lying a little bit. I don't think it's how the game transpired where they got Debo targets. And let me explain why I think he's lying. So I tweeted this out at 9:02 Eastern, and that would have been 6:02 Pacific. And Kyle Shanahan always scripts the first 15 plays. And so in the first couple of possessions of the game, Debo had 2 carries for 3 yards, 2 catches for 10 yards, a false start penalty, and he ran into Isaac Rendo on a running play. The game just didn't go the way that Purdy explained where, oh, yeah, it was flowing and we just happened to get Debo the ball. No. It was a concerted effort to get Debo Samuel the football, given what he had said, how Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy responded to what Debo said and said, yeah, he has a point. Like, we can do a better job of giving them the football. And that cost the Niners offense to have a really bad game. So I think it was a part of the game plan, and it was a bad way to go about the game plan, in my opinion.
Yeah. Last question. Let's hit the supers, and then last question. We got a couple here. Bill Kennedy says Debo is poison. Could we cut him now? You got to remember Kyle loves him. Marcus Harris says if the Niners have pick 15 in the 2025 NFL draft, who should they take? Do you have a thought at all? I know it's
just edge or offensive tackle. That's where I'm going. Tyler Warren would be really intriguing to me, but that would probably signal that you're moving off of George Kittle. There are bigger needs than tight end. I think you really have to rebuild the trenches to a certain degree. So I'm going offensive tackle or edge, and you hope that player is a part of this organization for the next 10 years. Yeah,
I would say, you know, there's a couple special players. I love Jalen Walker, who plays the edge for Georgia, but he's really more of a stacked backer. I love him a lot. And the guy that you guys all have to go watch is Landon Jackson, who is the edge rusher for Arkansas. He's 6'7", 280. He's got 6.5 sacks on the year and a forced fumble. He's an old school rusher, but he's a big time player. He's a little bigger than your typical edge rusher, but he's a hell of a player. Jake B says post-game show with Whitner said Campbell leaving, and the injuries at linebacker made Huff play linebacker, which is why the tight end was left uncovered. Okay, that was his view of it. Wayne Jenkins drops a single on us. Thank you, Wayne. All right, that's pretty much going to do it for us. Kyle's going to speak in about 8 minutes. Chase, I'll give you the final thought. It was a rough night. It's been a rough year for the 49ers. I guess my big question would be, where would you start? If I said to you, this team obviously wasn't, you know, where do you start in your rebuild for this thing? Are you firing Sorensen? Are you firing Schneider and Sorensen? Are you making Kyle of an OC? Are you taking personnel control away from Kyle? Are you forcing Lynch to have a personnel consultant? Are you, extending Purdy, trading Purdy? I mean, where are you starting your, man, they got to put the pieces back together?
Yeah, well, number one, I know that everybody's kind of hurting after that loss, but are we surprised? I mean, this has been the team that we've seen all year. Yeah. They are 6-8 for a reason. They've been so up and down, and so it hurts, but you really can't be surprised in the aftermath of that loss. As for where I go, I think this organization needs a retool and a reset, and I think that includes firing Nick Sorensen. If you want to still run the same defense, bring back Robert Saleh. I've been pounding the table for that for a while. Scheme familiarity, a leader, good energy, and a really damn good coach. You got to bring in a new special teams coordinator because the special teams are not good enough. The results haven't been there. As far as the roster, you got to get better at left guard, right tackle, defensive end, defensive tackle. I think it's a little bit of an overreaction to say take personnel away from Shanahan and John Lynch, because this is a talented team. And look what they did in the 2024 draft of note without Adam Peters. And so you have another draft in 2025 like you did in 2024, then you get some of those marquee contributors who are going to be building blocks and foundational pieces who are affordable for the next 4 to 5 years. That could really help you as an organization. And then can you move off of a couple of veterans, Deebo Samuel, to free up some money and to open up opportunities for others? Do you move off of a Kyle Juszczyk? They restructured the contract for Javon Hargrave. I think that signals his end, even though Shanahan said the plan as of right now is to have him on the team. What do you expect him to say? And so those are some of the changes that immediately come to mind that I think the Niners need to make. And yeah, I'd bring in a new OC like Mike McDaniel served in that role in 2021. You need that fresh perspective for Kyle Shanahan. You need to get some new creative ideas and some new creative juices flowing a little bit on that side of the ball.
It's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a huge challenge. Why? Because they have to rebuild the offensive line. They need to rebuild the defensive line. And the two areas of this football team that were spectacular, the weapons and the linebacker core, also need to be redone to a significant degree. So that's a lot to do in one off season, but we see teams go worst to first. But it's going to take a concerted effort. As far as I don't believe in taking the personnel away from Lynch and Shanahan, but I would like to say to them, hey, you know what? We need to change it up in the first round. We need to have another set of eyes here. We need to have an outside person come in and at least tell us what he thinks, so that we have other opinions, divergent paths and other options. So it's not just, because after a while, what happens is when what your boss wants, and it's a group project type situation, everybody kind of just aligns with what the power opinion is in the room. And I think if they just had a little bit more of somebody who's another independent voice in there that might challenge their reality or what their perception is, probably a positive thing.